Okay, good morning. So, last night I had an opportunity to go see a band called Right Side of Red. And it was an amazing experience. And I just got the opportunity to just, for a moment, immerse myself and just be. And I wasn't there as a facilitator. I wasn't there under any other title outside of just being humbled and honored to be able to be in a space that is thousands of miles away from my home that I know, but felt like home. And so for me, as I just was praying and meditating about it and paying attention to the words and the rhythm, for us as educators, whenever the opportunity presents itself, and sometimes we have to create the opportunity to step into some of the environments that are curated and cultivated by our young people, by our students. And that allows us to see them beyond just a student, and it allows them to see us just beyond being an educator. That the way that this workshop came together was Renee introduced Randy and I. But if our relationship would have stayed relegated to our titles, this would have been a totally different experience. But we had the opportunity to really get to know one another, and then let's birth something that not only we believe that you all will be touched by, but that we could be the first partakers of that. And so, in the spirit of that, we wanted to start this morning off doing a cipher, doing improv, because we understand there's something in that vulnerability, there's something in that creativity when you push past the frontal cortex. And so we are going to just jam. And where it goes is going to be where it goes. We invite you to chime in, sing, hit the table, do whatever you feel like doing. And in the spirit of science, and I'm not saying science as a subject, but in the spirit of science as a form of living, this is an experiment. And one of the things that I love about Thomas Edison is that he said that he never failed. He just discovered thousands of ways that didn't work. And so I just really love that perspective. So if the sound isn't perfect, it's not failure, it's experimentation. And there's gems in the midst of the experiment. So without further ado, my brothers, let's rock out. If I think about the vibe and the rhythm, there's so much in life I gotta give them. Seeds in the ground, waterfall, bloom fresh for all of y'all. You can take it up, and I'ma go with you. You can slow it down, and I'ma live with you. It's that vibration, it's that heartbeat, it's the words that connect every time I speak. I said I traveled kind of far, so I'ma feel the strum of the guitar, and realizing that it's more of me. 88 to make it exact on the keys. Let me just explain, I'm walking God's plan, feeling vibration on that silver pan. Every time I try, I do the best I can. I don't really I just overstand. Realize with this microphone is in control, revealing not my heart, giving you all my soul. So people on this side, hope you feel the vibe. And people on this side, I hope you feel that rhythm. So we gonna try to chorus and just sing along. So when I point and you say vibe and we keep it on. Vibe, vibe, vibe. I told you to participate the way you want your students, so just sing along. You can say vibe from your belly, make it sound strong. Vibe, vibe. There you go, there you go. Now we got to get you all with that rhythm. Rhythm, rhythm, vibe, rhythm, vibe, rhythm. Now give the instruments some. Now I'ma show my appreciation. Thank you for coming and creating this situation. This wasn't part of your agreed participation, but do you agree that it created elevation? Imagine if this is the way we entered education. Not the lesson plan, but we created vibration. We can unearth a better path for the next generation. I thank the Lord because this is my occupation. Vibe, vibe, rhythm, rhythm, vibe, vibe, rhythm, rhythm, rah. So while they are breaking down and moving, what did that feel like? Like I said, this was an experiment.
No, I said it felt Vibonic.
There should be mics at the table. So what was talk to us? Talk to us. I love your smile. I could tell that there's thoughts behind that. So please grab that mic and tell us the words that are behind that amazing, thought-provoking smile.
It put us at ease. It made us feel calm.
Okay. So it kind of set the atmosphere, made you feel calm. So if there was any anxieties about doing group presentations, they should be gone. There you go. Cool and easy. What else were you feeling? Actually, for any of my brothers who were playing, what was the experience like for you? Ordinary. Oh, so you lived this thing. Well, I can say for me, it was great. It was exhilarating. It was that good kind of anxiety because it was something that I had never done before. That if we would have threw on a regular instrumental or some boom bap, that's my comfort zone. Even yesterday, without having a beat, that's my comfort zone. But preparing for this, I was telling my wife, like, all right, I got to do it. I got to get out there. I want to model what it is that I want for us to do on that journey. And so, Randy, thank you because, like I said, we just was messaging and I just had the idea and he was like, I got you. And so you see what can happen. So sometimes the bravest part of it is making the ask because I could have talked myself out of making the ask. And then imagine if I stuck to the outline, which was already preset. I didn't make the ask, but then I shared it as an idea after the fact. And then he would have been like, brother, why you ain't say something? We could have did A, B, C, da-da-da-da-da. So sometimes we will allow prior experience, prior knows, sometimes even the way that we were raised, stay in your place, be super, super respectful, don't trouble the water, and then you don't ask. And for me, my thing was, I'm going to be in a room full of expert musicians. Why not ask? So you're in a room full of amazing, brilliant students. Why not ask? All right, so let's get going. So I want to play this video because there is some science that was actually happening. And you could say there was some math, there was some life that was happening. And I know that a lot of us learn different. So sometimes it's like, okay, it's hard to process while it's happening in the moment. But this video actually explains what we just created.
Your mind. Like when mid-song the guitarist just goes completely nuts and pulls this godlike solo seemingly out of nowhere. You might think that musicians who are awesome at improvising are just like inexplicably gifted, like there's some supernaturally talented genius. But psychological studies tell us that actually what really makes for a good improviser isn't some innate genius. Aside from a whole lot of practice, you just need to be able to switch your brain off. Common wisdom may tell you that when someone's improvising up a storm, their brain is probably on fire. Like in their brain, they're planning for the next section and figuring out how to plug in this thing they thought of yesterday or just trying not to mess the whole thing up. But actually, the opposite is true. Some musicians, like jazz players, often describe improv as this otherworldly experience. The rhythms and notes just burst forth from their instruments way faster than they're capable of processing what they've done. It's like it comes from somewhere else and just flows through their fingers. It seems pretty counterintuitive that such detailed, finessed improvs could be so effortless for some musicians to produce. But research on the brain can show us why this might be the case. A study published in 2008 using functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, looked at the brain activity of 6 professional jazz musicians. First, while they played scales, and then while they improvised simple melodies on a keyboard. They actually had to make the keyboard out of non-magnetic materials since the magnetic fields used in MRI imaging are really, really strong. Like things will fly out of your pockets if you're in the same room as them strong. And as if that didn't make this experiment awkward enough, the musicians then had to play lying down in the scanner's tight little tube. But somehow, it all worked out. Afterwards, researchers analyzed the scans and compared the brain activities during the 2 tasks, and they found that while improvising, there were 2 very distinct changes. First, the medial prefrontal cortex became active. Like other parts of the prefrontal cortex, this area of the brain gets involved in lots of activities, including decision-making and memory retrieval. And researchers believe that increased activity in this region encourages idea generation. It ramps up creativity and helps soloists come up with new directions to take the music. But that wasn't the only thing going on in the scans. At the same time, activity in the brain's lateral prefrontal regions had decreased. These regions are responsible for monitoring and correcting your behavior. For example, the lateral orbitofrontal cortex might be checking for mistakes and judging how enjoyable the performance is. Meanwhile, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is especially active when you're monitoring your actions or putting real effort into problem solving. But while you're improvising, these parts of your brain basically shut down. At first, that might sound kind of weird. The ability to monitor your behavior seems pretty important when you're on stage in front of a crowd, so why would these areas get quieter when you're jamming out? The researchers suggest that this shutdown may allow musicians to mellow out a little. They stop monitoring themselves so harshly and just let the music come out of them without being too critical of how it sounds. And it's not just jazz musicians that show these patterns. A similar study looking at brain activity in freestyle rappers showed exactly the same patterns of activity. It seems like with their brains in this state, musicians and rappers are able to just trust their instincts, take risks, and go with the flow. And flow state is what psychologists call being in the zone. Psychologists who have studied musical improvisation course, it's not the only thing at play. You have to be able to like play an instrument and know it really well before you can improvise. So when you're in a flow state, you lose a sense of yourself. Time flies by, and every action you take just seems to follow naturally from the last one. Like you don't have to think, you just do. In fact, the same patterns of activity we see in improvising musicians also show up during REM sleep, the phase of sleep that lets us dream. That's right, the same part of your brain that gave you that one weird dream about boogie boarding with Kanye are also responsible for boosting your creativity while you're awake. And this kind of makes sense, right? Dreaming is all about strange, unplanned associations and a lack of control. So it's easy to see why those same traits produced by those same brain areas produce that same feeling of otherworldly inspiration that musicians report while they improvise. The skills of improvising soloists are impressive for sure, but it's probably not just some innate genius that's letting them kill it on the stage. The ability to get in the zone is available to pretty much all of us. And with a little practice, maybe we all can quiet down our prefrontal cortexes and harness it too. Thanks for watching this episode of SciShow to Psych. If you liked learning about how your brain influences your musicality, you might be interested in this other episode we did about how music also influences your brain no matter how musical you are.
So what were some points that came up for you based upon what we did this morning, what we just did, and then watching that video?
Musicians are the smartest people in the world.
All right. Okay. I don't know who's gonna follow that up, but but what came up for you?
I would say that you gotta learn to turn off your brain, and I am very good at that.
I would say, based on the laughter, that sounded loaded. Okay, so musicians are the smartest people in the world. You got to learn how to turn off your brain. Let's go. This is where you get past, so you turn off your brain so you can just say what you're thinking and not self-check yourself and be like, okay, I don't think what I'm saying is correct, or they're going to make me explain it, so I'm just going to sit here. Nope, you push past it and you improv. What came up for you?
I would say that when it comes to the freestyle or the improv, it's at the point where the musician just relaxes and just let it flow out of them, whatever that may be, what they may be feeling at that point in time. I would give myself as an example. About a decade or so ago, there was a joke regarding me to leave the drinks alone. When I left the drinks alone, or should I say, when I didn't leave the drinks alone, I got into a very relaxed state. And I will play anything you put in front of me at that point in time. But from the time that you get a beer, so the improvising is like, once you start to think too much about what the pattern is that's coming and the next thing and the next, you go into what I would say academia, you automatically go, all right, we play this particular pattern here and this one there and next there. But when you go into full improvisation, you just relax and play. So the idea of it saying that your brain has shut down is like, not that it's totally shut down, you just remove the control barrier that says, this is what is right, and accept that anything that you play is right at that point in time.
Thank you for that. There's one right here.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I believe that music stimulates the brain in ways that a lot of other activities don't, and that music has a powerful effect on the brain. So then when you are improvising, You do not use all the aspects of the brain that you will usually use on a regular basis.
Thank you for that. Yes.
I see lots of parallels between this and, in a way, project-based learning, in that you have to kind of let go, you have to relax. You have the ideas, you already know your big picture, right? You already know how to play. But a lot of times as teachers, we can hold on really tight to our lesson plans, and we focus more on our what we teach and not who we teach. And so we got to stop teaching subjects and start teaching people. And so when we let go, and when the children can feel that they can let go, a lot more beauty can come out of it than when they're holding tight to.
Thank you so much for that. Yes.
So basically, I was hearing everyone saying when you're taking a solo, you just gotta let it flow, gotta let it go.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yes.
That's how creativity come about.
Yes.
All right.
Get to know you, then feel free to be you.
Get to know you, then feel free to be you. Y'all should have jumped up here. We was rocking out this morning. We're going to do a remix. Nah. Good.
Yeah, Tim and I were saying this morning, finding freedom within the rules. So we know that there are particular rules within music, but within those rules, there's a set of freedom. And even how you, like what you said, how you teach your students. Confession on my part, or testimony rather, improv is one of my weakest areas, and it was because of how it was taught and not having that mental freedom and the willingness to try because of how you were taught. You know, over the years, just trying to develop that has always been a major challenge. Crossing that obstacle, crossing that hurdle. So it's important how we deal with students and how we handle their development and growth.
Go ahead.
Just want to put in this here. I sometimes tell my more advanced students that you need to learn the rules well so you can break them properly. So you know when you step out and when to come back in, so you know, so then you can know what you can do and how to experiment.
No, and that's a brilliant point, and that was the point that the gentleman in the video was saying, that you're when you're thinking about it, that improvisation really is in comparison to what you're doing with your mastery of the standard, which is why he was saying that you have to really know how to play. What for me that I found from a cultural standpoint really powerful is that that MCs freestyling would experience the same thing as musicians, knowing that especially when hip hop was early on being created, one of the biggest charges against it was that it wasn't music. And so you then could see almost a level of arrogance to those who saw themselves as true musicians, because I know how to play an instrument and I've studied and I went to school for this, whereas you are just on the block. But then to do this experiment to see that the same thing is happening when you may be toasting on the block to the trained musician playing in any particular setting was something that really stuck with me. And the reality is that when we're talking about project-based learning, the standards don't go away. We still are measured by the standards. So it becomes, to what my sister was saying, that if you teach to only your curriculum, then you'll find yourself just teaching to the standard. Whereas if you are teaching to the young person and getting that young person to be able to, as my brother said, turn your brain off, in order to be able to master turning your brain off, you also have to know when it's on. Because otherwise, you wouldn't know. If you come into a dark room and you see the lights, but you don't see them on, you know that they're off because you know what they look like when they're on. So it's also so the standard may be master the standard. Then after that, we're going to turn the curriculum off and let's see what we can come up with based upon the standards that we've already reached.
Yeah, I just want to add, but it takes tremendous courage, and because you're being extremely vulnerable when you turn that off, and I can speak for myself because I do a lot of improvising. I do it every day, right? And especially when you do it in front of people, it takes a tremendous amount of that's outside of regular performing. It's outside of the courage needed for regular performing, right? So it is something that you need to do so much. You need to practice it and have confidence that you have done this so much that when you turn off your brain, or when you turn off the parts of your brain, as Joel was saying, and you can actually expose what's there lurking beneath, it requires a tremendous amount of courage and bravery to be able to do it. So you must have faith in what you've learned, that when you stop learning, then it's time to use, and I think that's part of maybe what Randy was saying. A lot of his freedom, maybe the way how he was taught, it was restricted and it was impacted. So because he has no confidence in that, he can't step out and then be this creative person in terms of improvisation. But then the courage, for example, he's a producer, but then the courage for producer, he's been producing for years. So then every production he does, he learns something, he has confidence in that. So then he's able to be creative in that way, right? And that's just, adding to the point that you were.
No, and thank you for that. And you just brought an example to my mind. Yes, go ahead, bro.
Right. Good morning again, everybody. What Darren mentioned moments ago was something that was going to hang out yesterday, but I said, let's go play it out, see what happened today, and it happened. As we watched those kids perform, right? There's one thing that we must always remember. As we are musicians, we expect some form of performance, as we said. But the thing is, when our powers that be asked for these shows, or they actually think about how these children would feel. Because as a performer, you don't want to just sound good, you want to look good. So they can come and play the sweetest horn line or whatever, but just there. Even when we have our competitions, that we say maybe Richard Stout, they go to their training, so they just can't stand up in one position for everything. They say about utilize the space, all those things. So when we do our project-based learning, if you're using the CM example we did yesterday when these kids were rapping, none of them were in one position. So the girls, they had a whole routine, whole choreography. So those are things that we need to look at. So not just saying that, yes, we put in forward the material, they can do it well, but when it comes to execution just not sounded, because it's about the whole package. So that is one thing. And lastly, as it relates to the whole solo aspect, for me, it's all about being able to adapt. And all of us in here, as in our professions, we always have to adapt. Because if we ain't got the right working conditions, we ain't getting the right tools, we got to adapt. We always got to adapt. So it's never to say that we get everything that we need or everything is put forward there for us, but we always have to adapt. So the same thing happens as you are soloing, because even although I said it was normal for me being up there, but I had to adapt to what the groove was, had to adapt with the feel, don't go overboard, stay within a particular parameter or whatever. So yeah.
Thank you for that, and thank you both for sharing. Even Randy, when you was talking about how you were taught, anyone in this room familiar with Steph Curry, basketball player? So there was a time that the way basketball was taught, you wouldn't have a Steph Curry, because the way that basketball was taught in its early evolution of it, you're not shooting that far away from the basket. You got to work the ball in, down low. The emphasis is on the big man, because the mindset, okay, you get closer to the basket, you're going to make the basket, and that's how you play. And so then you have this kid, Steph Curry, whose father played basketball. And so his father was really trained in what now may be viewed as the traditional way. And so then for him, it's okay, I'm going to learn that, and then I'm going to master that, but I didn't really find my genius in the way that the training was being presented at that time. So now I'm going to show you that I can pass the ball. I'm going to show you that I can run the plays. But now along the way, I found out who I am, building off of what you said. So now I found out who I am. And so now there is a freedom. And I'm going to do me and then be willing to be courageous, because doing me might get me put off the team. So then the question becomes, do I want to change my thinking where winning is fitting in? Or do I want to follow this thing inside of me where my victory is really in me being who I am? Because that summer when he still was shooting 3-pointers, but he was shooting from here as opposed to here, and he's a short guy, so that wasn't working. So he literally had to change his entire form. He had to invent a new standard that worked for him. And then now you have a generation of players around the world who feel like they can shoot further and further and further away. To the point now you have players who are 6'10", 7 feet tall, shooting from distances that when I was growing up, the coach would have snatched that player and be like, have you lost your beep, beep, beep mind? You are supposed to be down there. And so part of the braveness at some point, and I'll quickly say, I teach at Howard University. I teach in our College of Fine Arts. There right now is this budding of heads that's happening. So you have these students coming, and fine arts, you're studying theater, you're studying music, or you're studying art. And so then it's about this training. And so if I'm studying music and then you are showing me Beethoven and Bach and all of these colonial examples of standards, but then the young people are like, wait a second, if that was going to be the standards that you were going to train me on, I didn't have to come to one of the premier historically black colleges to learn that. I could have went to any college that teaches music that's going to teach that. So if I'm coming here, tell me who was the first black to score a symphony. Tell me those people who were intentionally left out of history, and let's revisit and let's make them become the standard. Yeah, and if this is a clash in higher ed, now of course their voice hits a little different because they're like, hey, we're paying tuition. You know, it's totally different in secondary and primary because they're not paying. But just wanted to let you know like how deep these roots run, and it's not just here in Barbados. And so sometimes the greatest lesson that you can learn is to unlearn. So anyone else had any thoughts? We good? I love the slow head shaking. That's that like, yo, I feel you. Like, I got you. Like, yo, I ain't even gonna say nothing. I feel my sister back there. She like, I ain't even gotta say nothing. You see my head nodding. I'm with you. I got you. I'm gonna holler at you at the break. So, all right. So let's do this. This is just a framework, and as y'all, as Randy said, you're gonna get this. So when I was working with some teachers and we were just playing around, like, okay, what is it that we want to do when you're talking about creating these learning environments, and when you're looking at your curriculum and creating opportunities, whether they end up being project-based learning or not, but just what opportunities within your lesson do students get to explore? What are the opportunities that they get to experience? So regardless of, as I said, whether you are doing full-on project-based learning, what is it that the students are able to do? And so that would be the experience. What is it that you're exposing them to? And then sometimes, what is it that you're allowing the students to expose you to? So these things can go both ways. And then how do you get to express? What does that expression look like? And so when you are thinking about those activities, and this is something that would go from primary to secondary, what is it that they are getting to explore, experience, what's being exposed, and then what do they get to express? Because then it's that learning by doing. And when you think about it, you're always, then, yes, you have to take the test. That's a part of life. But you would be much more confident when it comes time to take that test if you are experiencing things, you're expressing what your knowledge is and being able to express it in different forms. Because just as we was talking about yesterday with Science Genius, that by the time they were able to express what they had learned in their biology class in a rhyme, they had to master what the lesson was, because we told them that's like as much like we don't want you to stand up here and just regurgitate the lesson to a beat. So truthfully, with Science Genius, it was the marrying of not only science, it was also English and language arts, because then they had to study figurative language devices. They had to learn what is extended metaphor. So how do I then create a story that teaches the concept, but that my friends are going to want to listen to? Because you could have the audience full of teachers and adults and parents, but the bottom line, when you did something really great with your students, when your students take what they've done in class and they start sharing it with their friends. And so in this instance, it was them like, yo, like, listen to this rhyme. Let me know what you think. You're not even in my science class. So for you, you're going to listen and be like, oh, okay, you told this story about a man and a woman getting together in a relationship, you in the house on the couch, da-da-da-da. I'm feeling that. And then you be like, all right, listen again and remember what we was learning in science. Then it's like, oh, okay, I didn't even see that. So that's an example of different subjects coming together. Are there any questions, thoughts about this? Make sense? Yep. All right. Cool. All right. So what's going to happen before we get to the break? We're going to create working groups. The groups can be at your table the way that is configured now, or if you feel like, either based upon whether you're in primary or secondary or the type of music that you teach, if you feel it would be more effective to reconfigure and get up and sit at a different table, you can take a moment to do that, because the groups that are going to present are going to be by tables. And so what will happen is, once you get into your group, somebody from the group, I need you to write down your name and in your email on one of these, because then I'm going to send you a deck that you will fill out with your information for your project. So before I re-explain and go through what the project is everybody cool with working at the tables that you currently are, or do people need to get up and move? So as you are beginning to get together, I just need one person to write down that information, your name and your email, and I'll send you the template. But so listen up. So what you're going to do, what you are going to create, we already talked about the first member, how we say you're going to identify a group member. You're going to create a music-centric, project-based learning project that must incorporate 2 subjects that are not music. Remember, we were talking yesterday, and I had a quick conversation, and I want to reiterate. Can you write it on this? Just write a little bit larger so I could see it. It's right under that black bag that's right there in the middle. Yesterday's example was around the program we created called Science Genius. But the project that you are going to create as your group, one of the subjects doesn't have to be science. So I don't want you to think that because the main example we focused on was science with English, that I'm asking you to do one that focuses on science. Okay? Because someone came up and we talked yesterday afterwards, and I was reminded to make sure that I bring up that clarification. But it does have to bring together two subjects that are outside of music as your subject. So whatever those two subjects are, you can discuss and agree at your table. Right here is just another tool to help with the ideation process. You can ask yourself these questions just so that you arrive at what it is that you want to do. And know that when you get the template is going to have the 7 Ps that you will be able to do. And the objective of this is to really take the time to plan something that you and your group collectively, and it may end up being in more than one school based upon how your group is done. But we want you to take the time to plan something that you would feel confident enough to present to begin to pilot at your school. I know sometimes you may go to workshops where you're doing an activity and it's, okay, I did it. I can check the box to say that I've done it. We want you to really take the time because we want you to create something that you believe enough in for it to live, which also means you're creating something that you are willing to step out of one box to step into another to actually do. And that may require the partnering and collaborating of others in your group. Does that make sense? We're good? We in step with that, brother? Yeah. So, and to just refresh your memory, here's the sharing wheel again, but know that, so when you get the deck that you're going to work on, it'll have this here as a refresher so that you can refresh, and then you'll have a version of this that you can edit and add your content in. And so I'm going to send it to you and make you an editor so that when we come back from lunch, what would happen is each group, and it may not be all the members of the group, you can decide that, but each group will come up and present, and then this will be what you will be presenting on. So you'll have one of these created for your group. You'll give the project name. You'll be able to elaborate on what subjects you are bringing together and have it mapped out.